All right, give people another minute here to join. Again, too, as you're coming in, go ahead and put in the chat where you're zooming in from and what you're hoping to get out of the webinar today. Great, lots of people typing in the, oh, Kathy, you're in Seaside, that's nice. Michelle's in Medford. Awesome. Thank you all so much for putting your information in the chat there. All right, since we're now at 12:02, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. Welcome to our February webinar. Today, our topic is creating sustainable schools. And we're here with Riley Loveland from Oregon Green Schools, who's going to tell us about Oregon Green Schools and ways that Oregon Safe Routes and Oregon Green Schools can start to collaborate. All right, now I'm going to pass it off to Nora.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. I've met a lot of you and haven't met some of you, seen some of your names on emails. But thanks so much for being here for our hour-long webinar / interactive session on green schools and safe routes, collaboration and connection. So yeah, my name is Nora Stolting. I'm a planner and safe routes to school specialist with Alta Planning and Design. Along with Emily, I'm a member of the technical assistance provider team supporting ODOT safe routes to school across the state. I'm really excited for this webinar, partially because a lot of these topics are near and dear to my heart, and because I'm excited to have the opportunity to make connections across program areas and topics. My hope is that our time together inspires a lot of you and also helps to kind of zoom out and see a lot of the context that Safe Routes fits within. So in terms of our purpose together for the next hour, hopefully we can make lots of connections between programs and between each other, share ideas, inspiration, and stories, and do some reflection on what drives us to be here and to consider incorporating sustainability within our work. Emily, next slide, thank you. So our time together will be semi-interactive. We'll have some presentation style format, and we'll have some interactive breakout rooms. So if you're able to have your video on, it's highly encouraged. It helps to create more of that community feel. Totally, of course, if you need to step away or need to eat, like take care of yourselves and your bodies during the next hour and beyond and forever. But if you can have your video on, that would be excellent. So for our time together today, we're going to do an opening activity in some small group breakouts. We'll move through a presentation with Oregon Green Schools and participate in a bit of discussion and Q&A with Oregon Green Schools. We'll do new breakout rooms with some small group reflecting on our own work and our own organizations and communities. We'll do a little drawing / writing exercise, and then we'll end with some announcements about how you can stay involved. Next slide. So we'll be talking a lot today about initiatives and programs with an environmental sustainability lens, and we'll be starting like big picture, grounding our session within our own lived experiences, and then honing in on more programmatic ideas, and then how we can incorporate that into our own individual work. So we'll spend a few minutes meeting each other, sharing some stories in breakout rooms about a time that you remember learning something about or from the earth. So there's really no right or wrong. You can interpret this question however you want, just to kind of get some conversation going and meeting some other folks in the room. Some other questions to consider as you're sharing your story are where this learning experience took place and what makes it memorable to you. Why does it stand out? So I will copy and paste that question into the chat box. And then Emily will be creating our breakout rooms. Emily, how's that process going?
Great. I forgot to ask, would you like to be in a breakout room, Nora?
You can leave me out of the breakout room so I
Perfect.
can prepare for the discussion. And the breakout rooms will be 10 minutes long. So each person will talk for about 2 to 3 minutes sharing your story. And I'll send like a blast reminder to all the breakout rooms to switch to the next person. You'll be with 2 other people, groups of 3. So once those breakout rooms are ready, feel free to open them up.
Awesome. Okay. All right, you're going to be sent off to your breakout rooms now.
Just FYI, recording in progress. Okay, welcome back everyone. Hopefully that was a nice opportunity to chat with some new people and some familiar faces and share some stories. I have a quick little poll to launch. So this question is, where did your learning experience that you shared in your breakout room take place? Was it in a traditional classroom, in an educational setting, but not a classroom, or in a non-educational setting? And so this is just to sort of get us thinking about where learning happens, and within Safe Routes, especially thinking about how much learning happens on the way to school, on the way home from school, and the community building that can happen during that time. So it actually looks like most of our experiences that we shared took place outside of educational settings entirely, and a few in traditional classrooms, and one in an education, but not in a classroom. Great, thanks for participating in that. We're going to move on to Riley Loveland is going to chat with us for the next 15 or so minutes about her work with Oregon Green Schools, and I'll let her introduce herself. You can go ahead, Riley, and share your screen when you're ready.
Excellent. All right, let's see if everyone can see that. Someone give me a thumbs up. Excellent, great, thank you, Nora. Hello, everyone. My name is Riley Loveland, and I am a co-chair of Oregon Green Schools, which is a statewide nonprofit. I also work for another statewide nonprofit full-time called New Buildings Institute, and my background is typically in the built environment, so in energy efficiency and carbon neutrality. I primarily work in schools, but I actually work in all building types as needed, and I work nationally, but of course, because I live here in Portland, Oregon, my heart is all about Oregon schools and Oregon Green Schools. Oops, let's see. Sometimes I struggle with the Google, so I apologize if this doesn't cooperate with me. Very quickly in the chat, I know we've been interacting a lot, but I think this is kind of a fun, quick thing just to get a feel, because what's really unique to me is because I typically work in the built environment and school buildings, I don't know any of you, which is kind of unusual to me in our small little green schools world. So I would love to get to know all of you, see your faces. I know that a lot of you have already introduced yourselves, your name. It'd be great to know your organizations. I saw some of that. And then the interesting thing that is physically close to you, like for example, I have this rock that I took from our family farm like 7 years ago, and it still lives on my desk, and it's my little reminder. So go ahead and put that in the chat. Maybe we'll read some out later. It's an amusing thing for all of us, I think, as we move through. And I'm really feeling this today. It's always the PJs on the bottom and the adult shirt on the top. So like I said, I work for New Buildings Institute, which is a nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon, although we work nationally. I'm a co-chair of Oregon Green Schools. I recently took over the chair position at Oregon Green Schools. Previous to that, I had run an organization called Portland Green Schools, which has since become a chapter of Oregon Green Schools, which is great because there's a lot of green school stuff going on. I've probably said green schools like 15 times in the last 30 seconds. So we were able to come together and start collaborating on green schools efforts at both the local, the Portland metro area, and then beyond that for Oregon. I also helped co-found something called Sustainable Building Week, which takes place in October every year, that is primarily for sort of the design community, but it's opened up a lot more to be for sort of all people in the Portland area interested in all aspects of sustainability. We've had transportation, we've had, carbon emissions, and pretty much anything you can touch on. And also, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I have the chat open so I can kind of manage that at the same time, just to keep tabs on it. But before I go into what OGS is and just kind of the general, the general about, I sort of want to paint this picture for you that, we don't have this crystal ball to see into the future, but we do have a lot of data pointing us towards the way that carbon emissions and sustainability is really our only way of survival as a people. So all aspects of this, whether it's transportation, whether it's the built environment, whether it's water, waste, we all have a role to play so that this crystal ball, we can keep, kind of our nice world as we see it and objectively make it much nicer because it'll be more resilient and healthy. I like the wood stump from your parents. It's funny, I have a chunk of wood from our farm back here too. I almost grabbed that one. So like I mentioned, I typically work in the buildings, but I've done a lot of work. There's a lot of connection between the built environment and transportation. There's electric vehicles and electric buses, and climate change is happening, and it's caused in large part by emissions from human activities, which is of course agriculture, buildings, factories, but transportation alone contributes 29% of the US greenhouse gas emissions. And I think worldwide it's something like 23%. I should have that stat. Buildings contribute 40%. So if we're able to work on buildings and transportation together, like, wow, what an impact. And so we need to reduce our emissions by 2030. I mean, to be honest, we need to reduce them like yesterday, but 2030 is really our kind of our drop dead date, so to speak. Maybe that's not a way to say it, but there we are. But green schools, and green schools especially, play a really special role in driving down emissions. In our breakout room, we were just talking about car idling. I mean, that just seems like such an easy reach, but it's clearly happening everywhere. So there's a lot of education we need to do to continually help driving down those emissions. And of course, our students are calling for it. We saw it in person pre-pandemic. We saw it in Portland. We saw it all over the US, all over the world, actually. And then we're continuing to see it virtually now and hopefully back in person soon. But this is something that is not only dictated by science, but also called for by our students, as I think most of you on this call know. And with students and teachers spending over 1,000 hours, sure, that is pre-pandemic when we were actually in buildings all the time, but some of them it's even more. And there's some stat that's like 1 in 5 people are connected to a school building every single day, whether that's a parent dropping students off, students in schools, people working in schools, people volunteering in schools. That's a lot of people that these buildings that we have an opportunity in these, communities, whether it be, people working in the lunchrooms or people working in the grounds, gardens, all of the things are touching daily and 1,000 hours a year. And of course, like I said, green schools are our solution. There's so many touch points in a green school. For example, this gal on the left here is doing an energy audit. She's doing a ASHRAE level 1 energy audit, which is just kind of a deeper energy audit so that she's actually getting paid to do this work. These are students learning about energy efficiency on the right. And there's so many options. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir here that given safe routes to school and given a lot of what you guys are seeing and encountering, that's a hard one. Given that, I think that there's a lot of touch points and a lot of opportunity with your work and what Oregon Green Schools is doing to make sure that we are hitting all of these touch points so that students are able to use every aspect of their day to learn and make our communities more resilient. So with that greater context out there, what is Oregon Green Schools? So Oregon Green Schools, we work to activate climate and sustainability leadership by providing an inclusive network and resources for students, schools, and communities. So we really serve as a statewide organization that has a certification program as a resource for one, which I'll talk about, but we're also here functioning as a resource hub. And that's a relatively recent pivot. I've worked in Oregon and I've worked nationally, and some states have kind of a united front when it comes to green schools. Oregon Green Schools is one of the unifying sort of entities in the state that brings together all these resources. So it's sort of functioning as that umbrella to help, bridge the gap between what other people are doing and make sure that we're not recreating the wheel and that we have as many resources and physical and people support as possible. And our vision is equitable, accessible, and sustainable communities across Oregon. And what's so cool is that there's so many communities represented today. I have, Medford, we've got Seaside, I love it. And these probably look familiar to a lot of you. It's probably very similar to your own values of environmental stewardship, collective accountability and integrity. I love, this is my favorite one, optimistic realism, which sometimes feels like an oxymoron, but we're rooted in data and science, and we're rooted in what we want people to be able to actually achieve, while also sort of pushing the boundary of what can be achieved. And, you know, sky is the limit. You can sort of achieve anything you set your mind to, and bringing in that holistic community engagement so that there's ongoing growth throughout the state. So this is kind of a crazy bubble of our realm, but Oregon Green Schools functions, of course, with our regional coordinators. So we have a network of regional coordinators that are across the state that help us implement green schools in different areas. I'll show you a map of them in a little bit. We have local government and agency partners. We work with garbage haulers and other businesses like the Department of Environmental Quality in Oregon. So we're in Portland Metro. So we're rooted sort of in these communities with their kind of key organizations for implementing sustainability programs. I mentioned the Oregon Green Schools chapter earlier. So we have one chapter now. We're looking for more. Central Oregon, I'm looking at you. I'm physically, or like kind of looking at you, even though I don't really know who might represent, but just keep that in mind. And then of course our K-12 schools partners, which are green team leaders, our students, our teachers, facilities staff, custodial staff, the kitchen staff, administrators, after school programs. The sky is the limit about who can be involved in Oregon Green Schools, as long as you have that commitment and that passion to sustainability. I mentioned the regional coordinators. So this is a map of our regional coordinators. We have them kind of spread throughout the state. Of course, Eastern Oregon is a little bare, but we might work on that soon. But you can see, especially in a lot of the metro areas, that we have a pretty robust regional coordinator representation. And we have a list of them. So if, you know, you're in one of these areas and you're like, gosh, I would love to know who my regional coordinator is, we can connect you with them. And then similarly, this is a nice mirror of our regional coordinators, but you can kind of see that our participating schools mirror where our regional coordinators are. But then we have some that are floating over here on the east side of the state. We would love to get full state representation. So the Portland Metro chapter I kind of mentioned earlier is a Portland regional Portland Metro chapter. And so they're really all about kind of the same thing, promoting sustainability and design and operation of these buildings. They're sort of born out of more the design and construction community, but they've really taken a lot of that knowledge and implemented it in different schools and different activities. They do a lot of educational outreach, like webinars and things like that about, you know, sustainability from all aspects, or they did one last year about construction and funding for high performance schools and things like that. So if you're in the Portland metro area and you're interested in getting involved in them, they're not just about building design. It's super inclusive. There was a gentleman on the last meeting that was talking about like urban bees. So it really is very inclusive of all. If you're interested, that meeting is the second Friday of the month. And if you're interested in starting another regional chapter, let me know. So I mentioned that OGS, although we're a larger resource hub, does have this certification framework, and we have 6 tracks: waste, reuse and recycling, green lunchrooms, walk and roll to school, gardens and grounds, energy conservation, and then water conservation and pollution prevention. So I'm going to zero in a little bit in a minute on the transportation one. But so we go by a badge system to recognize certified schools. We didn't really want to like rank them as in like, you got gold, you got silver. So we went by this badge system. And so each time you certify in a new track, you receive a badge on a certificate. Pre-pandemic, we used to do assemblies and really fun things. I think that is still still on the docket. If you want to do a virtual assembly, we would love that. And we encourage all schools to work towards collecting all those 6 badges for the 6 certification tracks. And I wonder if I don't know if this is on this slide, but you have to recertify every 3 years. And then the certification framework is a series of steps. So you do an investigation and an interview, which we provide you. And it may be like interviewing your custodial staff to figure out what your energy set points are, or figure out who your utilities are, things like that. Then you do an audit, which is in an in-depth kind of like hands-on activity to figure out, if people are turning off the lights, or how many people are idling at their schools. And then you set up just some classroom activities and connections that you can bring sort of into the classroom. And I want to be specific too, that you can a lot of this can be brought into any type of class. It's not just the math or the science. I spoke to a teacher not that long ago who had actually brought transportation and emissions into her French classroom. So she had her French students talk about the role of emissions or transportation emissions, but in French. It was awesome. And then we do a green school spotlight and you develop your goals and your action plan. Also, if you do waste, reuse, and recycling or gardens and grounds, you get co-certified with Eco Schools and we help you move through that. I will answer that question in a second, Michelle. What do you think about solar panels on schools? Ooh, I could do a whole webinar on that. I did put this in here. So certifications are valid for 3 years from the month of certification. And you just do a check-in questionnaire to gauge any progress. And then if there's a new action plan you want to implement, that's how you recertify. And for each one, there are resources for each school. So, you can see walk and roll down here. That's our transportation one. The screen is hard to read. I'm sorry. But you can see down at the bottom, I hope, that there's more resources. It's not just 4 bullets for each one. There's a ton of resources. And like I said, we're this resource hub. So if we're missing some, send it our way and we'll get it updated. And a very big note here that our certification program is currently run through an online system that is sort of not serving us well anymore because we have sort of adapted and changed. So in the next month or so, we're changing the way that these certifications are processed and done to make it easier for you, to make it easier for us. So stay tuned, big announcement, we're excited. Let's see. So just a quick spotlight on the walk and roll to school certification track. Like I said, you do this interview and audit, and then you do a tally and a tracker. That's that audit part. And there's an activity tracking sheet. You can see, you're trying to track who did what across the day. Did they walk? Did they bike? How many students were doing this? And then we want you to do this Green School Spotlight where you actually present to your school or school community. Board meetings are great avenues for that. Depending on the certification track, you can also do them at, I guess you can do them at all of them actually, community fairs and things like that. And then you create your goals and your action plan, 2 short-term and 2 long-term goals. And then there's tons of resources like I showed you to help fill this out. And then you submit and we review and we all celebrate and it's super great and you get a certification. I will take questions at the end. I was just going to stop for questions, but I realized I'll just keep going. Other things that we have going on at Oregon Green Schools is we used to pre-pandemic do this super fun in-person annual summit where we would have, a selection of students from each green team come and we'd get together and we'd have a day of just like peer-to-peer learning and networking and leadership development. They were super fun. We would like to shoot for 2022, but we did some strategic planning the other day and that does not feel like it's in the cards. But 2023, your calendars, we're going to do this. And it's just kind of a 1-day celebration conference where we'll have like hands-on activities with new skills and leadership and smiling happy kids and smiling happy adults. It's wonderful. So we're bringing that back. That's really it for our programming right now. So this is kind of where I turn back to Nora and Safe Routes to School about kind of what's next, because Oregon Green Schools, our strategic plan has expired. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth and collaboration here. So we're sort of looking to you, and I know we're going to discuss in breakout groups where the collaboration might be and what you want to see from OGS. And I think that's it, right? That's it. I will turn it back to you.
So I think we'll just move straight into questions and discussion. We'll have like close to 7-ish minutes for that, Riley, depending on how many questions folks have. So there are 2 in the chat and then that might spur some more, but you can go ahead and start with those.
Cool. I will answer Michelle's question first because I'm always excited as I talk about carbon neutral schools and sustainability. I think solar panels on schools are great. Solar panels being utilized in any school district, either on the physical space or in a sort of portfolio approach, is wonderful. For example, when I mean portfolio approach, I mean, let's say, I'll just use the Portland schools for an example. Roosevelt High School has enough solar for only half of their capacity, but Grant has enough for more than half of, or more than 1.5 of their capacity. You can combine them as a portfolio approach as it comes back to the district so that you're offsetting enough energy for multiple properties or multiple projects. I think they're great. We've seen a lot of success out of them. They have gotten significantly cheaper than they used to be. There's incentives, there's all sorts of stuff. And if you couple solar panels with a battery or some other storage system, then you're able to then potentially island your school in the event of an emergency. If there's a heat wave or an ice storm, I'm sure you guys are familiar with those these days. If there's anything like that, the school becomes a resiliency hub. But if you have more solar panel questions, I'll talk your ear off, but I'll stop there. And then there's this question from Janice. Is there a way to connect to schools that have gotten the transportation badge? Yes. If you connect with me, I can put my email back in the chat. I'll look up in our database who's completed that one. That one's a relatively new one, so I'll make sure that we have schools that have completed that. But I'm super happy to connect you with other schools or even other regional coordinators that have a focus on transportation. I'll do that right now.
Yeah, thank you. I know that there's quite a few of our, before the pandemic, there were quite a few of our parent champions who were participants in Oregon Green Schools.
That's excellent. The pandemic definitely made things tricky for everyone, but we're coming back. It's happening.
It's true.
Any other questions for Riley or thoughts? The next thing will be, oh, Danny, go ahead.
I'm curious how increasing attention to environmental justice and social equity dimensions of sustainability work has affected your programming.
A lot. So, and when I say a lot, I mean that it hasn't necessarily translated directly into the physical certifications yet, but it's a conversation that we've been having because, effectively before we were able, we might say we have a Title I school that's participating, but we weren't necessarily looking at the actual demographics of the students participating. But now that's something we're really paying attention to. And there's an effort that we're looking into, I think, for the next year. And I'm not going to say too much about it, but it effectively would help us sort of level that playing field, focus on the students, the specific students at the schools that need the most support, that might not have access to green teams. I actually used to work for Washington Green Schools, and I've worked in green schools for over 10 years on every state on the West Coast at this point. And we had students in underserved areas that, might not have access to a computer, but we were able to come together and spend our green school or our green team time actually laying out sort of our plans together so that, they were able to do this with students that also had, we were able to access sort of the same things together. And that's sort of what we're focusing on here. And one of the other things about OGS is that because we're this statewide entity, we really don't want to reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot of cool stuff being done in this state, through Sunrise PDX or other organizations. There's one down in Eugene that the name is totally escaping me, that's doing a ton of student climate justice work. There's also the student climate justice work happening in Portland Public Schools. So we want to amplify that as opposed to trying to repeat it. And that was one of the major reasons for dovetailing our mission to become a resource hub as opposed to, creating more content. I hope that answered that. It's a great question.
Okay, well, it's probably a good time to shift to our next activity. Thanks so much, Riley. That was super relevant to all of our work, and really excited to continue conversation and collaborating, figuring out new paths for collaboration. So sort of this next part is we'll do some new breakout rooms, just about 10 minutes, maybe even less than that, groups of 3. So again, each person, I'll send you a message when it's a good time to shift to the next person. They can each spend 2 or 3 minutes responding to these 3 questions. So we're sort of trying to hone in now on the work that we're each doing individually within our spheres, whether it's a school or an organization or just within your community. So what is something within the realm of sustainability, that environmental sustainability, that you're proud of at your school or organization? What's an area of growth? And what connections can you imagine between Safe Routes to School and Oregon Green Schools? So if one of those questions resonates with you the most, you could spend the whole time talking about that. No pressure to get to all three. I'll paste them in the chat. And Emily, do you have the new rooms created?
We are all ready to go. So I'll
Okay.
be opening those now.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how I did this again, where I made one with 4, but one with only 2.
Oh, interesting. You can move people, but I guess, wait, I don't see one with 4.
Yeah, their room 12 has 4.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I'm gonna move Julie.
Yeah.
Sorry, Julie. There we go.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, we'll do this, and we have 10 more minutes, so we'll do some announcements at the very end, but for now we'll just spend a little bit of time sharing if folks are interested in that. No pressure to share if you don't want to. But did anyone have something for the first question, something that you're proud of within your school or organization around sustainability that you feel like sharing with the group? Julie?
I didn't share this with the group fully, but I did bring up that at a previous position over the last few years, I did, as a parent volunteer, actually, I did a Wednesday recycle program, and I was simply turned on to that by my student's teacher. And so the teacher took it upon themselves to be a champion at their school to do extra work for the teachers, because all the teachers are expected to recycle already, but basically made it easy for them, and the students would have a job at the end of the day on Wednesdays to pick up the recycle and take it for them. I do know that once that teacher was gone, it kind of phased out. So I feel that this is something that it would be great to have some kind of student or a teacher champion, maybe even a stipend position to lead the way on such things, because I do know it's a little extra work to coordinate students, but once you get enough students, it can be done in like 20 minutes or less.
Thanks for sharing, Julie. Yeah, definitely the program sustainability piece. I'm sure many people here can resonate with that challenge. When there's teacher turnover and parents have fluctuating capacity, but love that you thought about getting teachers, parents, and students all involved in different ways. Let's move on to the next question. Does anyone have an area of growth within their school or organization that you feel like sharing with the larger group? Or maybe a project that you're thinking about starting, curious about? Julie?
Gosh, who was I talking with at the beginning? Lale, is that how you say your name? I can't remember how you said to pronounce it. Anyway, we were talking about, and by the way, I got taken out of that group earlier. Sorry, I had to jet out. I went to another group. As I'm doing some crosswalk campaigns recently, I noticed that there were idling cars. And so I thought, now that I have this crosswalk going and people are doing a great job, I can really heavily promote the thank yous. Thank you for using the crosswalk and using the great parking spots. Now, can you please not idle? And I'll wordsmith it to be more of like a promotion type thing. And maybe include some statistics on there that I will reach out and try to see if there's some great little snippets I can add to any newsletters. So just more using an existing platform and something that was positive and adding to it. So I'll just throw that in on, because they're all idling there or hanging out, doing a great job using those crosswalks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Like noticing what people are doing well and using that as the point to jump off of. Because it can be easy to just pile on all the things to change, but taking a pause to recognize what's working and appreciating people, so important. McCrae, did you want to share too?
I was just thinking of things so my name is McCrae Carmichael for Salem Kaiser Safe Routes to Schools funded by the ODOT grant. And we're in our 3rd year of our grant, and we are just going to be able this spring to do both pedestrian safety in several of our elementary schools. We have 43 elementary schools in Salem Kaiser, so several being 5 is a good start. And also bike safety clinics we're going to be running. And, by giving kids the tools to be safe, one hope is we have a lot of people at our schools crossing wherever they feel like it, typically adult led. And so that by doing this work, we're hoping that students will say to their parents, oh no, we're supposed to cross at the crosswalk, mom, dad, grandparent, caregiver, and help direct that. So I don't know, it all comes together, right? And so I thought I'd share, this is a win that I have, while it's not a district initiative yet, I have schools where I have relationships and partnerships where they want to have this kind of education happening. So thanks.
Totally, thanks. Yeah, it sounds like you're looking for ways to empower the students too, to kind of guide the adults in their lives to get to school in different ways. So we just have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure we spend a couple minutes talking about this last question around connections between Safe Routes and Oregon Green Schools. So what came up in breakout rooms? Any ideas around bringing those two programs, those two topic areas together? If anything. If nothing, that's okay. Charles, did you have something?
We discussed it for sure. I have a specific question. Is Oregon Green Schools have a regional facilitator now that can serve the central Willamette Valley?
If you tell me where specifically, I can answer that question.
Salem.
You know, what's funny is I just got an email from McCrae asking the same question. I don't believe we have a regional coordinator in Salem, but that does not mean that we can't get one. So one thing, I'm just going to step in here because here we go. One thing I was going to mention to my group is that, we've typically had these meetings that have been for our regional coordinators for the, 20 or so of them. But we're going to start opening up those a little bit more so that we can help recruit more regional coordinators and more interested parties, because there are clear gaps, like in Salem and, of course, the east side of the state. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. A lot of that has come from, a lot of those people overlap with something called the School Resource Conservation Group that has existed, but it's creating more collaboration so that we can get more support for areas like Salem.
Well, we haven't had one for the last 3 years, to my knowledge.
We'll try and get you one. Anyone here interested?
Anyone else? I think we have time for like one more person to share if anyone had any ideas around connections between Safe Routes and OGS. Michelle.
Hey, well, so the reason that brought me to Safe Routes to Schools was because I think it's really important to be able to get to school safely. I got hit by a car walking to school, and so that's just something that is really near and dear to my heart. And I feel like if there's an easy way to get to school or a safe way to get to school, then people will choose that sustainable option. But it doesn't always have to be sidewalk. So I was talking to one of the neighbors yesterday. I just rang her doorbell. I call her house the secret garden house. She's got a path that is goes through her garden that she doesn't mind if people use to get to school, and it's on the corner of the school. And so I just thought, well, maybe we can go there as like a kind of a club at the school and make the path a little more accessible for like strollers and people. And to me, that's like kind of a mix of both, right? Sustainability and safe routes to school. And you could do it without concrete, right? So that would be more sustainable for the environment if you could make it a safe route, but not concrete. So I don't know if there's some way to kind of coordinate something like that.
Yeah, it sort of makes me think of like an overlap between the gardens and grounds certification track and walk and roll, is that, aside from pavement, there are other pathways that people use, and often they can be beautified and using native plants and things like that. Stormwater plants that absorb more stormwater than other plants,
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful idea and inspiring thing to keep in the back of our minds as we move forward. So with the last minute, Emily, if you want, okay, you got it. Okay, we're going to move into some announcements before we close up.
Yeah, before we leave, I just want to share a few quick announcements. As many of you know, Winter Walk and Roll to School Day is next week on February 23rd. If you go to our website, Oregon Safe Routes /Winter Walk Day, you can download our toolkit, which has awesome graphics like this made by Alta Planning and Design with Strider and Viv. So you can download those, use those for your social media. There's activity guides, things like that, all in that toolkit on the website. Again, also too, as many of you know, that without Safe Routes to School grants are open. So again, go to our website, check out the application information. Heidi and Leanne have office hours. I believe those next ones are on March 3rd and March 10th from 3 p.m. to 4:30. But again, you can find that information on our website. Our next webinar is going to be March 15th from 11 a.m. to noon. I just wanted to announce this to note that new time change. We'll be sending out more information about that very soon, but it's going to be a really great one. So I definitely recommend. Again, too, we have our sustainable funding discussion, which is going to be this Thursday, February 17th from noon to 1. We'll send out the Zoom link to that as well, too, as a follow-up to this webinar. So be sure to sign up for that. You can get a bit of information about how to go beyond the ODOT funding, create strong programs, and make sure that your Safe Routes programs are continuing for as long as possible. And then next we have our Earth Month Toolkit, which is coming soon. We thought, why celebrate just Earth Day when you could celebrate the Earth all month long? So in April, we're really encouraging folks to celebrate Earth Month, and we'll have a toolkit coming out for that as well. And that was really fast, and I apologize. I was trying to get through all of that. But I want to thank you all for your participation. And here are Nora, Riley, and I's emails if you have any questions. And thank you again for coming.